Every storm begins with stillness, and in marriage, that stillness is what fools most men. She's there, smiling, cooking dinner, taking care of the kids, planning the family vacation. But something invisible is changing. Not in her words, not in her actions, but in the chemistry that drives her very sense of self. Around her mid-30s to mid-40s, a woman's biology begins to turn inward. The same hormones that once made her nurturing, affectionate, and future-oriented begin to fluctuate. Her brain starts to process emotion differently. Where she once felt driven by connection and family, now she feels restless. A subtle but persistent hunger for something more. And here's the part most men never see coming. This isn't a conscious choice. It's biology rewriting her priorities. For years, her feminine instinct was to create a home, a family, a life. But as time moves on and her body starts whispering that those fertile years are ending, her psychology shifts from building to becoming. She starts asking herself, who am I now? What do I really want? Did I give too much of myself away? These questions sound innocent, but they're loaded with the kind of emotional dynamite that, once triggered, can shake even the strongest marriage. You see, when a woman begins to lose the external validation that once defined her, male attention, compliments, social praise, her focus turns inward. And what she finds there isn't always peace. It's often resentment, not necessarily toward her husband, but toward her life. She remembers the girl she used to be, the one with dreams, with energy, with freedom. And she compares that image to the woman she sees now, tired, responsible, and emotionally invisible. And the deeper that contrast grows, the more she feels trapped inside her own success. It's not that she doesn't love her husband. It's that he reminds her of the version of herself she's trying to escape. The wife, the mother, the caregiver. Roles that once gave her identity now feel like anchors holding her back. This is the beginning of the shift beneath the surface. It's not rebellion, it's recalibration. Her mind is searching for a new identity, a new purpose, a new sense of value. And because most men don't notice it, because they keep living as if everything is fine, the emotional gap begins to widen. She starts pulling away emotionally, not to hurt him, but to find herself. Yet every step she takes away feels like a step toward freedom. And that's where the danger lies. Because once she starts feeling that freedom, the marriage begins to feel like the problem. And when that thought takes root, it grows silently until one day it becomes action. This isn't the explosion. This is the rumbling beneath the ground, the warning tremors before the storm. And most men, blinded by routine, never feel it until it's too late. It starts with a glance, just a quick look in the mirror. But that reflection doesn't look the way it used to. The face staring back isn't the carefree girl she remembers. It's someone older, wiser, but also more uncertain. The mirror becomes more than glass. It becomes a confrontation. This is the mirror stage. The moment when a woman begins to measure her present against the illusion of her past. She starts to wonder, where did that spark go? When did I become ordinary? It's not vanity, it's identity erosion. Because for years, her self-worth was tied to how others saw her. And now, as life settles into predictability, that reflection no longer feeds her ego the way it used to. But the mirror isn't just physical anymore. It's digital. Social media has become the new mirror, and it never forgives. Endless pictures of younger women living exciting lives, old friends finding themselves, influencers flaunting beauty and freedom. Every scroll becomes a reminder of what she thinks she lost. Comparison becomes poison, and the more she consumes it, the more her reality feels dull. She starts romanticizing her past, The wild nights, the attention, the thrill of being desired. Memory becomes selective. She forgets the insecurity, the chaos, the pain of those years, and replaces it with nostalgia's filter. Suddenly, her husband isn't the man she chose. He's the man holding her back. That's the danger of the mirror stage. It tricks her into believing that the best version of her life is the one she left behind. And the more she believes it, the less she values what she has now. Psychologists call this temporal displacement, when the mind starts living in a timeline that no longer exists. She starts fantasizing about a second chance, a reset, a do-over. Not because she wants a new man, but because she wants to feel new again. To feel that rush of validation, that intoxicating sense of being wanted. And here's where the shift turns dangerous. When she feels invisible in her current life, when her husband feels familiar, predictable, her mind starts scanning for anything that breaks the monotony. It could be a compliment from a co-worker, a message from an old friend, a man who listens a little too closely. That moment, that tiny spark, becomes the first crack in the glass. It's not about love. It's about validation. It's her ego whispering, "You still have it." And once that whisper takes root, the reflection in the mirror changes again. Her husband's face becomes the symbol of responsibility. The other man's face, or even the fantasy of one, becomes the symbol of freedom. The mirror no longer reflects reality. It reflects desire. And desire doesn't care about commitment, logic, or vows. It only wants to feel alive again. That's how it begins. Not with betrayal, but with reflection. Not with action, but with imagination. Because before a woman ever leaves physically, she leaves in the mirror first. No marriage collapses all at once. It crumbles slowly. Not from hate, not from betrayal, but from disrespect quietly growing in the dark. And here's the painful truth most men never realize. When a woman stops respecting you, it's over, even if she's still there. Respect is the foundation of attraction. It's what makes her see you as the leader, the protector, the man worth following. But when that respect starts to erode, love doesn't vanish right away. It decays. She might still say the right words, still play the role, but emotionally, she's slipping away. So, how does that erosion start? It begins subtly, through perception shifts. Remember, by this stage, she's begun questioning her identity, her purpose, her choices. She's looking at her life and silently asking, did I choose the right man? And the smallest cracks in your masculinity, hesitation, complacency, emotional neediness, start to look much bigger to her. She starts comparing the man you are now to the man you were when she first met you. Back then, you were a challenge. You had direction. You had fire. You didn't need her approval to move. Now you seek peace instead of purpose, comfort instead of conquest. And though she says she wants peace, her biology craves polarity. When she feels your masculine edge dull, her respect begins to fade. When you stop leading, emotionally, sexually, spiritually, she doesn't feel safe anymore. Not unsafe like fear. Unsafe like uncertainty. She can't trust your direction. And here's the paradox. She doesn't consciously want to lose respect. She doesn't wake up one day and decide, I'll stop admiring my husband. It happens quietly, through micro moments. When you give in too easily, when you avoid confrontation, when you hesitate to stand firm. Every time you yield your authority to keep the peace, you trade respect for comfort. And women don't love comfortable men. They love certain men. Once that certainty disappears, she starts testing you, not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. She'll challenge your decisions, question your confidence, even create unnecessary tension. She's not trying to destroy you. She's trying to feel you again, to see if the man she admired still exists under the layers of routine and submission. But when those tests fail, when she realizes you no longer hold your ground, that's when the shift completes. The man she once looked up to becomes the man she quietly looks down on. And when respect dies, desire follows. That's the part men can't grasp. They think love will save them. They think effort, gifts, apologies will fix it. But once she's lost respect, everything you do to win her back only proves her point, that she holds the power now. This is the erosion of respect, the silent disintegration of polarity, the collapse of leadership, and the beginning of emotional detachment. It's not the storm itself, but the wind changing direction. And if you don't catch it early, it always leads to the next stage. The validation void. This is where the real unraveling begins. Not in anger, not in infidelity, but in emptiness. Because when a woman loses respect for her husband, she doesn't just lose affection for him, she loses validation from the relationship itself. See, for most of her life, a woman's sense of worth is built on being seen. From the first compliment she ever received, her brain learned something powerful. When I'm desired, I matter. That early wiring doesn't disappear with age. It just gets quieter. Until one day, it starts screaming again. When the compliments fade, when her husband becomes distant or predictable, when the world stops giving her the attention she once took for granted, her brain panics. And that panic isn't logical. It's primal. It's the subconscious fear of fading out of relevance, the terror of no longer being wanted. This is the validation void, a psychological hunger that grows stronger the longer it's denied. And once it takes hold, logic no longer controls her decisions. That's why so many midlife women begin to chase excitement, new clothes, new routines, new social circles, new experiences. On the surface, it looks like self-improvement. But beneath the surface, it's desperation in disguise. She's trying to outrun the feeling of invisibility. Even worse, the culture around her encourages it. Social media feeds her slogans like, "Choose yourself." You deserve to be happy. It's never too late to start over. Each phrase sounds empowering, but beneath them is an invitation to abandon stability in exchange for fleeting validation. And here's the paradox. The very man she once turned to for validation now becomes the symbol of her lack of it. Because he's too familiar, too safe, too ordinary. She begins to crave attention from outside the marriage, not necessarily physical, but emotional. A co-worker who listens, an old friend who compliments her, a stranger who flirts. Each small interaction triggers a dopamine hit, soothing that internal ache. It's not love, it's medicine. The more she gets, the more she needs. Because validation, once externalized, becomes addiction. And her husband, the man who once provided comfort and security, now represents everything she's running from: predictability, familiarity, age, and commitment. This is where many men start to panic. They sense the distance, feel the shift, and try to fix it, with affection, with reassurance, with begging. But every attempt to fill her void only deepens it. Because she doesn't want to be comforted. She wants to be desired again. And here's the painful truth. You can't outlove a woman's need for external validation once she's lost it within herself. You can't talk her out of the void. You can't reason with biology. Once the validation void takes hold, it rewrites her emotional priorities. She'll risk peace for excitement, security for significance, loyalty for attention, not because she's evil, but because she's starving. And that hunger leads to the next stage of the storm. The emotional affair trap. Every affair begins with a simple sentence. He understands me. It's rarely about lust at first. It's about connection. The emotional affair doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts in the mind. And that's what makes it far more dangerous. By this point, the validation void has already opened. She's restless, unseen, hungry for attention that feels genuine. Then, almost by coincidence, a new figure enters her world. It might be a co-worker, an old friend, or someone she met online. Someone who listens, who asks questions, who makes her feel interesting again. And in that subtle shift, the emotional boundary begins to dissolve. What starts as harmless conversation, venting about life, about marriage, about stress, and slowly becomes something deeper. She tells herself, it's just friendship. But deep down, she knows it's more. Because she's not sharing information, she's sharing intimacy. And that's the true beginning of betrayal. See, when a woman emotionally invests in another man, it's not casual. It's connection. It's the very thing that once bonded her to her husband. And now, she's transferring that energy somewhere else. Every message, every inside joke, every moment of emotional vulnerability is one thread of connection being quietly pulled from the marriage and woven into something new. But here's the thing. She doesn't feel like she's cheating. Not yet. Because women don't view emotional infidelity the way men do. Men see betrayal as an act. Women feel it as emotion. So long as there's no physical contact, she tells herself she's innocent. Yet her behaviour changes. She becomes distant, defensive. She hides her phone, changes her routines, starts guarding her privacy. The guilt isn't what drives this secrecy. It's preservation. She's protecting the one thing that makes her feel alive again. And that's why emotional affairs are often more devastating than physical ones. Because they don't happen by impulse. They happen by investment. She's investing her emotional energy into someone else, piece by piece, until there's nothing left for her husband. By the time a man notices, it's too late. The connection's already formed. He's no longer competing with a person. He's competing with a feeling. And you can't argue with feelings. You can't reason someone out of the emotion they're addicted to. That's what makes the emotional affair so insidious. It's not about the other man. It's about what he represents. Freedom, validation, attention, newness. He's not the cause. He's the symptom. The manifestation of everything she feels she's missing inside. But eventually, even that high fades. Because emotional affairs, like all illusions, can't withstand reality. The thrill turns into confusion. The fantasy collides with like consequence. And when that happens, when her double life begins to crack, the storm reaches its peak. The storm always looks calm before it breaks. To the outside world, she seems fine, composed, functioning, maybe even thriving. But inside, she's cracking. Because when the emotional affair fades, when the fantasy fails to deliver the happiness she imagined, she's forced to face something far more painful than guilt, herself. For months, maybe years, she's been living between two worlds, the stable reality she built and the imagined one that promised freedom. And when those two collide, something fundamental inside her shatters. Her sense of identity. See, up until this point, she's been able to justify everything. The distance, the coldness, the secrecy. In her mind, she wasn't being selfish. She was healing, rediscovering, finding herself. But when the dust settles and she realizes that none of it gave her peace, the truth hits like a freight train. She wasn't escaping her marriage. She was escaping herself. That's the moment her ego collapses. Because the woman she thought she was, the loyal wife, the nurturing mother, the morally righteous partner, can't coexist with the woman who betrayed her own values. And rather than confront that contradiction, her mind does something far darker. She rewrites history. She tells herself, we were never truly happy. He didn't appreciate me. I was trapped. This isn't lying. It's survival. Her brain is protecting her self-image from total destruction. because guilt is unbearable when it threatens identity. So instead of owning the betrayal, she reframes it as liberation. She convinces herself that blowing up her life wasn't a mistake. It was empowerment. And society helps her believe it. Friends tell her, you deserve happiness. Social media tells her, it's never too late to start over. Therapists tell her, you were unfulfilled. Each voice becomes another brick in the wall between her and accountability. But deep down, when the nights get quiet and no one's watching, she feels it. That hollow space where integrity used to live. That ache of knowing she traded something sacred for something temporary. This is the collapse of identity, when who she was dies and who she is now feels like a stranger. And the tragedy is that in trying to reclaim herself, she loses the very foundation of meaning. Because fulfillment doesn't come from rebellion, it comes from alignment, and she's now living out of alignment with her own truth. This is when depression sets in. When the excitement fades and the world no longer validates her choices, the silence becomes unbearable. She starts searching again, not for love this time, but for absolution. But you can't heal when your identity is built on denial, and as that realization sinks in, the storm that destroyed her marriage turns inward. Her husband is gone. The fantasy man is gone. And what's left is the mirror, forcing her to face the one person she's been running from all along. That's when the storm finally breaks.